Welcome back to Laughing in the Dark, the podcast where I hang out in haunted places with comedians. I'm your host, Sara Jones. This is another fixture in our Minisode series where you tell me your ghost stories. For this episode, I got to talk to a good friend of mine from back home named Greg. Greg took the time to go into the store he works for early just to share some interesting paranormal experiences with me. Here's the call. Hello, Gregory. This is Sara Jones.
Hi, Sarah. Hey,
Hi.
Sarah, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Good to hear from you.
Good to talk to you. Do you want to tell listeners your name and something about yourself? Just introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'd love to. My name is Gregory Hatt, and I'm from West Michigan in Grand Rapids. I run a hemp-derived CBD company called the Integra CBD online store. Check us out.
All right. You said you have two ghost stories or just one?
Oh, well, I've got a million of them, but I think, the most notable ghost story of mine, I wouldn't even call these ghost stories. I call them like spirit stories, because that's kind of the way I perceive them and I've come to think of them, and honestly, I avoid it to some extent because I've gotten freaked the fuck out in the past and had some weird shit happen. But I'm going to share a little bit with you guys today.
Okay. I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. So, you ready?
I am more than ready. Born ready.
Born ready. That's what I like to hear. I guess like the most notable story for me is, I was in this house where this woman had died, and this woman was the mother of my current girlfriend at the time, and we were actually in the room that she died. And, I had been aware of this before, and what was most remarkable about this ghost story, or spirit story, if you will, is that I was sober. And, so I think that's relevant, because a lot of my spirit or ghost stories, that wasn't always the case, but in this one it was.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it so interesting to me. And, in this particular event, we were kind of just going through the house, and I started to feel this really strong spirit, like this really significant presence moving through the house nearby me. And I kind of like immediately started to vacate the home. And upon walking out, I just started feeling this connection to this spiritual being, this entity. And by the time I got out into the car, it was just undeniable that there was a presence nearby, and I sort of addressed it. I don't exactly remember how I went about it, but I addressed that there's a spiritual presence and talked to my girlfriend at the time about it, and I was like, hey, I'm pretty sure I'm feeling your mom right now. And then I started she was freaking out, like, what, really? Like, oh my God, and she was feeling something too. And, we were both feeling this presence, and I, for whatever reason, her mom chose me to speak through me to her. And I became a vessel for her spiritual self to speak to her daughter from wherever she was. And, I feel funny just even talking about it still, because it was a very emotional experience for me to be a conduit for that energy and for that spirit. It was almost like a benevolent possession, you could say. It gave my girlfriend's mother an opportunity to kind of say her last words to her daughter through me. And it was unfortunate circumstances, she died younger from, cancer and, heavy drinking. And so she had a lot of sorrow. She was very sorry to her daughter for leaving so early. And her spirit was in a lot of pain. Mm. And as the conduit for this, I felt all that pain. I was feeling a lot of emotional pain from her mother through that experience. So I was emotionally, I was in pain. I was suffering. I was crying in tears as her mother cried. Basically, I was I was experiencing the emotions of her mother's spirit during the experience. And I just did my very best to hold the space, to stay grounded and allow her mother to come through, because I was crying, speaking the words on behalf of they were just coming right through me. And, my girlfriend was in tears because I was saying things that no one could possibly say to her, and no one would possibly know other than her mother.
Wow. So you don't, you don't have to share what she was saying or anything like that. I think that would be, private probably. But you felt
preferred.
But you felt like conscious of what was happening while it was happening too. You didn't feel like
100%. I was 100% conscious, but I was in what I would consider similar to a flow state in terms of like my ego or my mental self was out of the picture. I was just very much in my physical form and experiencing a flow of energy through me. Like I was a vessel, like a hollow bone or like a tube through which this was coming through. Like I was acting as a gateway or a portal for this experience to happen. I don't know why her mother chose me, maybe because I was open to it and had the ability to receive her presence and allow for that experience to happen. That's the only thing I can think of. And what else was really funny about the whole situation is that I drove my girlfriend's cousin to her mother's funeral before I ever met her, and that was my first interaction with my girlfriend. Essentially, I didn't meet her at that day, but that was my first direct connection to her and her mother's. But I actually drove her cousin to the funeral. So
wow,
yeah.
Well, that sounds like a powerful experience.
Yeah. I mean, it really shook us up. We were both super emotional, and her sister came outside and was like, and it was still kind of middle of the experience, and we told her what was happening, and she just blew us off and thought we were on drugs, and we're like, we're not on drugs, we're sober. And she didn't believe it. She felt it, but pushed it away. She just wasn't in a place to accept that. And I remember us leaving the house after that because we didn't feel comfortable because we had just been accused of being on drugs, and, driving through her neighborhood super slow, and that experience continuing with her mom talking through me. And honestly, I got a little weary of it because her mom was just in so much pain, and I was feeling all of it. It was one of the most intensely emotional, painful things I've ever felt. And yeah, I mean, so I had a limited energy for how much I was able to hold that space for them, so I had to kind of urge and move the conversation along and kind of be like, okay, all right, say what you need to say, because this is grueling and excruciating. And I actually kind of felt like her mom's spirit kind of I don't know, it wasn't that benevolent towards me in a way. It was I felt like she was she was getting to say her piece at my cost. You know what I mean? And I was happy in a way. I was honored to do that for my girlfriend at the time. But, we didn't really know what to make of the experience or heads or tails of it. We didn't have the emotional, psychological, or spiritual training to really understand that experience, and didn't really know what happened. It was just a mind fuck, and I haven't talked to her about it really in a long, long time, so I don't know what she thinks about that experience or what she makes of it. But she still does always say that her mom shows up in the form of dragonflies on a regular basis, and even my daughter knows that. And whenever we see a dragonfly, she's like, Grandma Ginger, Grandma Ginger. And honestly, more than once I felt like I felt like her presence has been around in the form of a dragonfly. So for whatever that's worth, I'm not the kind of person to get into that spiritual hoodoo voodoo bullshit. I'm a very grounded, rational person, but my experience is my experience, and that speaks that there is something to it for me.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, wow. Thanks for sharing a very personal, spiritual encounter. That's I haven't heard any possession stories yet. And I mean, I suppose that's kind of like a possession in a way, or I don't know.
Yeah, I would say I was acting more as a channel. But
As a
in
channel,
way, it did
yeah.
feel as though my being was possessed by her spirit, but it was not, what was the word? It was
Wasn't
it was
malevolent.
consensual. It was consensual, let's put it that way.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so and what was your other story? Was it related or was it something completely separate?
No. You know, I mean, I don't know. You know, like I've seen the glowing orbs in the cemetery pop up in front of me and feel like there was a spirit that didn't want me at the cemetery late at night and those kind of situations. And, you know, like I swear to God, I had Jimi Hendrix pop out of the wall at me one time, you know, but there was some more involved with that story, you know, and I've had some really unique experiences in those ways, you know, and even just walking through cemeteries, I feel like I've been able to connect with certain spirits of the deceased. So I feel like that's the sort of situation is if you're open to it and you are sensitive that you may pick up on those things. And then if you tap into them, they can get really loud, like subtle things become big things. Those things are happening all around us all the time. And honestly, that's something that I've somewhat closed the door to for myself because I just had too many freaky experiences. I will tell you one more really, really powerful story that I think is really interesting and obviously a sign that there is something going on beyond our realm.
Okay.
Because so that same cousin that I drove to my ex-girlfriend's mother's funeral.
So your ex-girlfriend's cousin. Sorry.
Yes, yeah, my ex-girlfriend's cousin. So she hold on one second.
Okay.
Hey, I'll call you right back. Thanks, bye.
Who was that?
That was the current owner of the store. So anyway, my ex-girlfriend's cousin, who I drove to that funeral, she claimed to be a medium, like a psychic, and she could see spiritual beings and entities all over the place. And so one time we were all hanging out in my room, and she was trying to do like a reading for me, and she connected to these 3 Latino women, and they were like, yeah, we know your man right there. He's gonna live on our street in California on De La Guerra, you know, and I just happened to be moving to Santa Barbara, California, and I looked it up, and sure enough, there's a street called De La Guerra in Santa Barbara, California, and the very last place I lived before leaving Santa Barbara was on De La Guerra.
Oh, so, okay, wait. Let me back up here. So,
Yep.
Your ex-girlfriend's cousin.
Yep.
She was doing a spiritual reading with you.
Yep.
And this was like years and years and years ago?
Yeah, way like over 10 years ago.
Oh, okay. And so she predicted you would be living on a street in Santa Barbara, and then later you ended up living there?
On the exact street. She didn't predict. She had a conversation with 3 Latino women, and they told her, "Hey, your man's gonna be kicking it with us over here." And and De La Guerra means of the war. It's in Spanish, and that was the Latino part of Santa Barbara. Like it's all Latinos who live in that area. So the fact that it was 3 Latina grandmas that were having that conversation with her is totally fit.
And then later you ended up living there? Or was it like she called that you had lived there before?
No, she predicted that I was going to live on there, and a few months later I did.
Interesting. That's wild.
Yep. Yeah.
How was she doing the spirit reading? Was it with like tarot cards or like palm reading?
Nope. She was just very like a conduit herself, very intuitive, you know. And it was one of those experiences where like I didn't know if she was crazy or not, but like so many things happened that later it was like, oh my God, well, there's really no denying it because everything she said ended up being true. So, it's like how would she have known that there's a street that I was going to move to Santa Barbara, that there was going to be a street in Santa Barbara called De La Guerra, that I was going to live there. You know what I mean? Like that's just phenomenal.
I don't know. That is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe it's one of those situations where she put it in my head, and because she put it in my head, when De La Guerra popped up on Craigslist, I was like, oh, I'm going to live here because it's De La Guerra.
Yeah, that seems familiar. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, but it happened, so.
But you said there were other things that she also predicted that came true?
Oh, well, I don't recall the full extent of, there was an inclination where she, like, you know, like, you and my friend are going to have a thing, and that totally did end up happening.
Okay. So, if it's, like, private, you don't have to, like, obviously.
Yeah. No, that was pretty much the one I really wanted to highlight. Nothing too far beyond that.
Yeah. That's cool, though. So she felt like she had, because, you know, there are obviously, you hear about like psychics that just, they have visions, you know, but I don't, and maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about, but I feel like a lot of psychics don't attribute those visions to other spirits giving them insight, you know what I mean? So for her...
Yeah, I was just gonna say this woman. She just pronounced that she sees spirits. That was just. It just was what it is. She was always telling me about this old man who'd sit in the rocking chair and rock back and forth, who lived in the corner of the house, and you know, like all this stuff. She was just. It was her. She was directly seeing and conversating with spiritual beings who were deceased, you know, who were still hanging around. That was her source of information. It was not anything other than that.
Wow. Well, that is awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your ghost stories with me.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime, Sarah. I hope all you listeners out there enjoyed the stories. I got to actually get the store fully open and operational just in case anyone comes in here this Sunday. Oh, there's my phone.
Oh, there it is. Okay, well, thank you so much. Have a great day. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Much love. Bye.
That's all for our Minisode today. Thanks so much to Greg for his stories. If you're interested and want to support Greg, be sure to check out his CBD company, Integra CBD. Integra CBD offers high-quality artisan hemp products and over 100 CBD products from a community of mindful creators. You can find their website at integracbd.com or follow them on Instagram at IntegraCBD. That's INTEGRACBD. Do you have a great ghost story that you want to share with me? We want to hear from you. Email us your story at litdarkpodcast@gmail.com. We might want to put you on the show. Thank you so much for listening.